For the first question, we're given 2/3 and we need to find out which fractions are equivalent. Now what I'm going to do is multiply the top number or the numerator by 2, and I'm going to multiply the denominator by 2. These two have to be the same number. 2 times 2 is 4. 3 times 2 is 6. So I can see straight away 4/6 is equivalent. So I can cross out 4/5. So I'm left with 1/2. So let me check. I'm going to divide the top number or the numerator by 2, and whatever I do to the top number, I have to do to the bottom number. So I'm going to divide this by 2. So 2 divided by 2 is 1. 3 divided by 2, now you have to be careful, it's 1.5. The first thing that we notice is this is not a real fraction because you have a decimal point. And secondly, we need to compare it to 1/2. And we can see that the numerators are the same, but the denominators are not. So we've not got an equivalent fraction there. So our only equivalent fraction is 4/6. My next question is 4/5. And I want to know, is 3/4 equivalent? Now with this question, I want you to learn some facts. I want you to learn 1/5 is equal to 0.2. So learn this as a fact. So if 1/5 is 0.2, 4/5 will be 0.8. And I'll show you here how that is. So I've got 0.2 for 1/5, but I want 4/5. So I want 4 of these. 2, 3, and 4. So I now need to add these. Now if you notice, I've lined up the decimal point to stop making silly mistakes. So 2, 4, 6, 8. And these are all zeros. So 4/5 is 0.8. So that's the first thing you need to know. Now another thing I want you to know and learn, because it's important, it'll help your fractions become much more easier, so it doesn't hurt your head as much. So 1/4 is 0.25. Now if 1/4 is 0.25, we want 3/4, and that will be 0.75. Now if you can learn these, your maths becomes much easier. So how did we get this? So 1/4 is 0.25, another quarter is 0.25, and finally you have this. 5, 10, 15. You put the 5 down, you carry the 1 over. 2, 4, 6 plus the 1 we've carried over is 7. I've lined up the decimal point here carefully, and these are all zeros. So my answer is 0.75. That's where that comes from. Now I can clearly see 0.8 and 0.75 are not the same. They are not equivalent. So these two fractions are not equivalent. Now my next fraction is 12/15. So how do I get from 4 to 12? I multiply by 3. Now to find an equivalent fraction, whatever I do to the top number, I have to do to the bottom number. So I have to multiply the denominator by 3 as well. 4 times 3 is 12, and 5 times 3 is 15. So I know 12/15 is equivalent to 4/5. Now the third fraction I need to compare this to is 40/50ths. So how do I get from 4 to 40? So that's quite straightforward. I multiply it by 10 because I've got an extra 0. Whatever I do to the top number or the numerator, I do to the bottom number or the denominator. So I also multiply this by 10. 4 times 10 is 40, and 5 times 10 is 50. So I can say 4/5 is equivalent to 40/50ths. So the two fractions that are equivalent to 4/5 are 12/15 and 40/50ths. Now my third fraction is 1/2. And I need to compare it to 11/12ths. So what number do I multiply 1 by to get 11? Times 11. And whatever I do to the top number, I do to the bottom number. So I have to multiply this by 11. 1 times 11 is 11. And 2 times 11 is 22. So I can say 1/2 is equivalent to 11/22s. And the number we've got is 11/12ths. So half is not equivalent to 11/12ths. Now the next number I need to compare half to is 5/10ths. So I've got to ask myself, how do I go from 1 to 5? I simply multiply by 5. And as before, whatever I do to the top number, I have to do to the bottom number. So I have to multiply this by 5. 1 times 5 is 5. And 2 times 5 is 10. So I can say 1/2 is equivalent to 5/10ths. Now the next fraction I need to compare 1/2 to is 9/10ths. So how do I get from 1 to 9? I multiply by 9. As before, whatever I do to the top number, I have to do to the bottom number. So I need to multiply the denominator by 9. 1 times 9 is 9, and 2 times 9 is 18. So 1/2 is equivalent to 9/18ths. So 9/10ths is not equivalent to 1/2. Now the fourth fraction I need to compare half to is 10/20ths. So what number do I multiply 1 by to get to 10? It will be times 10. And whatever I do to the numerator or the top number, I have to do to the bottom number or the denominator. So now I have 1 times 10, which is 10, and 2 times 10, which is 20. So 1/2 is equivalent to 5/10ths and 10/20ths. My third question is 3/4, and we need to find equivalent fractions for 3/4. So the first fraction they've given is 30/35. So how can I turn the 3 into 30? I can multiply that by 10, and whatever I do to the top number, I have to do to the bottom number. 3 times 10 is 30, and 4 times 10 is 40. So 3/4 is equivalent to 30/40ths. It is not equivalent to 30/35ths. Now how do I go from 3/4 to 13/40ths? Now there's no number I can multiply the top by to get 13. So that's not possible. But this I can do. I can multiply this by 10. 4 times 10 is 40. And if I multiply the top number by 10 as well, I get 30, and it's not 13. So this number here, 13/40, is not equivalent to 3/4. The next fraction I need to compare 3/4 to is 9/12. So how do I go from 3 to 9? 3 times 3 is 9. And whatever I do to the top number or the numerator, I have to do to the bottom number or the denominator. 3 times 3 is 9. 4 times 3 is 12. So I can say 9/12 is equivalent to 3/4. The fifth fraction I need to compare is 1/10. So is 2 22s equivalent to 1/10? So what I do is ask myself, how do I go from 1 to 2? I multiply it by 2. Whatever I do to the top number, I have to do to the bottom number. So I have to multiply this by 2. 1 times 2 is 2. And 10 times 2 is 20. So 2/20 is equivalent to 1/10. So 2/22 is not equivalent to 1/10. The next fraction I need to compare 1/10 to is 11/110. So how do I go from 1 to 11? I multiply it by 11. Whatever I do to the top number, I do to the bottom number. So I have to multiply the denominator by 11. 1 times 11 is 11. And 10 times 11 is 110. So 11/110 is equivalent to 1/10. So I need to compare 1/10 to 10/100. So how do I go from 1 to 10? I multiply by 10. And as before, whatever I do to the top number, I have to do to the bottom number. So I need to multiply that by 10. 1 times 10 is 10. And 10 times 10 is 100. So 10/100 is equivalent to 1/10. So the final fraction I need to compare to 1/10 is 2/6. So how do I go from 1 to 2? I multiply by 2. And whatever I do to the top number, I need to do to the bottom number. 1 times 2 is 2. And 10 times 2 is 20. So 2/20 is equivalent to 1/10. So 2/6 is not equivalent to 1/10. For the sixth fraction, which is 4/10, I need to compare it to 4/9. And I can see straight away these two fractions are not equivalent. So they're not equal. Because the numerators are the same, so the denominators should be the same, but they're not. Now I need to compare 4/10 to 2/5. So I need to ask myself, how can I go from 4 to 2? I need to divide by 2. Whatever I do to the top number, I need to do to the bottom number. So I need to divide this by 2. 4 divided by 2 is 2. And 10 divided by 2 is 5. So 2/5 is equivalent to 4/10. The third fraction I need to compare to 4/10 is 8/20. So how can I go from 4 to 8? So I multiply the numerator by 2, and whatever I do to the numerator, I have to do to the denominator. So I need to multiply that by 2. 4 times 2 is 8, and 10 times 2 is 20. So I can say 8/20 is equivalent to 4/10. Now my last fraction is 20/50. And I need to compare it to 2/5. So I need to ask myself, how do I go from 20 to 2? And I can see if I divide 20 by 10, I get 2. So whatever I do to the top number, I have to do to the bottom number. So I have to divide the denominator by 10 as well. So 20 divided by 10 is 2. 50 divided by 10 is 5. So I can say 2/5 is equivalent to 20/50. So the next fraction I need to compare to 20/50 is 2/10. So how do I go from 20 to 2? I divide by 10. Whatever I do to the numerator, I do to the denominator. 20 divided by 10 is 2. 50 divided by 10 is 5. So 2/5 is equivalent to 20/50. So 2/10 is not equivalent to 20/50. Now the last fraction I need to compare 20/50 to is 4/100. Now I can see straight away that from 50 to 100 I have to multiply by 2. But for the numerator, I have to divide by 5. So these two fractions are not equivalent because the numerator I have to divide by 5 and the denominator I have to multiply by 2. So 4/100 is not equivalent to 20/50. Now what I'm going to do is show you a shortcut here. So let's just take 2/5 and 4/6. I want to know if these two are equal. I want to know if that statement is true. All you need to do is take the 6 up and multiply it by the 2, and take the 5 up and multiply it by 4. So can you see what you've done? You've taken the 6 up, so 2 times 6, and you've taken the 5 up, 5 times 4. 2 times 6 is 12. 5 times 4 is 20. Now we can see 12 and 20 are not equal, so this is not equal. So 2/5 is not equal to 4/6. Now one more thing I can see, 20 is bigger than 12. So if I go down, I can say 4/6 is bigger than 2/5 as a fraction. Now with these questions, you just need to keep practicing and eventually you'll become good at them. And your maths will become easy and you'll start enjoying your maths.